That's Harvard.
So when it comes to the beginning stages, or to the development of colonies in space, or habitats on other exoplanets, or another space station, or let's say a moon or whatever. In terms of energy usage, there should definitely be a emphasis made on using, for the now, at least based on the technology that's available, using nuclear as a primary energy source in its current form. Using any other alternatives, such as I would say solar, even solar, wouldn't be enough in terms of providing enough energy to expand beyond a certain point where you would need more solar to provide the energy needed for that expansion. So for the sake of expansion, I think having some kind of nuclear plant that maybe is nuclear fusion in nature, where expandability is better in terms of deploying energy to newer houses or newer habitats, versus having to install, let's say, another, I don't know, an acre of solar panels to provide the necessary power. To energize that new segment. Nuclear should also be a primary energy source for spaceships, especially space stations. You can have a combination of solar and nuclear. You probably have some subsystems that are not as power demanding. Be reliant upon solar versus the core consumptions, the core aspects of a station that is typically more energy consuming, or more energy demanding to be fed with nuclear energy. I don't know, maybe like such as life systems, navigation, you know, anything that's the core element of a space station. Things like lighting, maybe just powering fans or something, or lesser components could be powered by solar. Not only that, propulsion, obviously, the biggest thing. So if you're traveling from Earth to Mars, or Earth to Jupiter, and you want to get there quick, obviously you're going to need a nuclear reactor that is going to be capable of constantly, actively being capable of actively generating enough energy to speed that vessel up faster and faster and faster. You could say nuclear pulse propulsion as being one of those methods, where you can think of it as like a constant explosion being ejected from an exhaust system of a car. Only difference is it's not a car, it's just the exhaust of a spacecraft. To accelerate it, it comes from out of the exhaust, not so much cylinders or pistons, but that actively creates a constant explosion at every certain interval. Therefore, speeding up your vessel faster and faster and faster, since there is no gravity in space. Well, when you're not bound to, let's say, a planet. Obviously there is still some gravitational forces, but for the most part, you're pretty much floating. So you're not really gonna feel that acceleration because there's nothing counteracting that. So this way you can go 50, 60, 70,000 miles an hour, 80,000 miles an hour, and so on and so forth. So taking a normal trip to, let's say, Mars, let's say if you do it on average 90 days, it will be within like 2 weeks with nuclear pulse propulsion. This has some great implications that can definitely expand and speed up the developmental process. And given that we're only here for a finite amount of time in our biological form, life expectancy and all, if we get to that point, it can seriously bring one a sense of accomplishment. It feels like we are committing to and completing at an exponential rate some task that can benefit us, certainly quicker, but when you think about it in the long term as well, it's drastically increases our survival in the long term, because we're not held down, so to speak, to one's planet. So the amount of cooperation that would be needed as well between us, putting aside differences and all that, would have to be, the emphasis has to be of the most extreme importance. Otherwise, there's really no room for division, and you can have disagreements, but it needs to be civil and cordial. It needs to be handled and dealt with in a professional capacity, because the latter is more destructive. So this is what I think when it comes to the primary energy source that we should be focusing on when it comes to space colonizing and our space vehicles.